Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Josh Peak, and I happen to have Josh Treadaway here again. Say hi, Josh.
Hi, Josh.
So I'm glad you could do this. I did a solo one last week, which was fine because I had a lot to say, apparently.
Yeah, in retrospect, I'm kind of glad I wasn't on the call because it probably wouldn't have been a positive as it was.
Right. So that's one of the things that I'm told that I have a knack for, is to be able to sort of always look on the positive side of things and to sort of spin it in a way that is encouraging. A lot of people, especially nowadays with social media, are pretty negative, and I kind of want to build an environment where everybody's sort of in support of one another, even though sometimes we lose our way. So that's part of it. But also I had a lot because I'd watched a lot and I just was in a mood. I don't know. So when you couldn't make it, I was like, okay, good, because I'm running downhill this whole episode. And I kind of did that. I did take notes, by the way. Actually, surprisingly, not about Star Wars. I know this is kind of weird, but I did see a few of the. I don't know if you've watched it yet. There's a lady on YouTube called Star Wars Meg that does almost like a daily recap of things that she's heard and speculations. And every time she speculates into something, I'm like, hey, that's a good idea. And it's also something that we've sort of talked about, but not really gone into depth of. And it's kind of nice to see that reflective view. One of the ones I watched this past week was the Obi-Wan story, and about how they're going to show him basically with PTSD in his series, having flashback episodes of Anakin as a young Padawan, and of his basically his best friend, and he was his mentor, but also he feels, I guess, in a way that he failed him. So there's going to be some of that involved. But also, like, Darth Vader's the big baddie during his life there, and while he's supposed to be guarding Anakin's son, there is that part of him that's going to be overwhelmed with grief. And I thought, yeah, that's going to be a big part of the show. Plus he's going to have his own adventures also. I don't know what previews you've seen, but I've seen some previews of him leaving Tatooine, so he's not going to stay there the whole time.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
It's funny because Ewan McGregor, the older he gets, the more he looks like something else. Like, he doesn't look like himself. His face has morphed into, he's a man now. He was kind of a boyish kind of guy before, and now he's a grown man. And as a grown man, he's a little grizzled and he's lived some life. I know he went on some world adventure of riding motorcycles, supposedly from the tip of the South Pole to the tip of the North Pole, some crazy crap like that. And he cataloged it. There was a movie that they did a biop of him doing that, and I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And also, I'll never do that, so good for you. But you can imagine having that much time on a motorcycle, it aged him. Like, his face just looks weathered. But there are some previews out there of some action sequences of him jumping off of things, or getting into starships and flying off, and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Because they don't really show you enough to get you in, but just enough for you to go, oh, this is gonna be good. You know what I mean?
Well, he probably went to Alderaan to check on Leia, because he's basically watching both kids, and she's been taken care of because she's in a dignitary's kind of family, so she's obviously been taken care of. But he's probably going to check on her as well.
Right. So the guy that we saw take her in was Senator Organa, which is right. She's going to become Senator Organa in the future. But it's not really talked about, the fact that we're going to get to see that actor who played her keeper. Yeah. We're going to get to see him, in this next generation. Hopefully, he's still healthy and everything. But there's also the discussion of Leia being betrayed by, what's her name? Miley Brown. The girl who played 11 on Stranger Things.
I did not actually watch that show yet.
What's
I know I need to watch that one, but I haven't.
Let's see if the Google knows, because Google knows everything.
Google knows everything.
I'm gonna Google it.
Well,
who's gonna play a young Princess Leia?
Oh, you're talking about the deep fake. It's Molly Brown.
Yeah, Miley Brown. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She plays 11 on Stranger Things.
Okay.
Looks a lot like her, ironically.
Well, it's the same thing they did. The only reason I know is the same thing they did. Remember when they did the deep fake on Luke?
Yeah.
So They showed a fake. They did a deep fake with Miley Brown. That's the only reason I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so hopefully that'll come around and we'll get to see her as a young girl, and maybe Obi-Wan just making sure she's okay, or maybe he's thwarting some kind of plan because someone finds out about her, because we know, in the original movie that there's that moment where you don't really know what's going on. Like as a viewer, you're introduced to Luke and you're introduced to Obi-Wan as old Ben Kenobi. And there's Princess Leia going, "You're my only hope." And it's like, how does she know Obi-Wan? But also there has to be a connection there. So there's going to be a storyline that continues there, or she's going to know Obi-Wan and she's going to know that he can help her. So there has to be some kind of interaction with them to lead us to that point.
Right. So hence him leaving which I never even thought about, but yeah, hence him leaving the planet.
Yeah. So it's like, this is kind of what this Star Wars Meg is doing, is she's basically speculating with her friends and then coming out and putting her own version of, well, of course they got to talk about this. And this is kind of an example, but she's a lot more clever with her production because she has like images of the movie playing in the background. So you see it happening. You're like, oh yeah. Cause I know that guy. Cause us talking about it, people who are casual listeners or watchers are going to be like, I don't know who any of these people are. I've heard of Prince of Leia, but whatever. So anyway, I have been doing a guilty pleasure. I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and I was watching Westworld on HBO years ago. Season 1 was really great. Season 2 was both of them were very confusing. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's very confusing. It's okay. So you haven't seen it. You're probably not going to see it. I'm just going to give you everything. Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
So season 1 starts off, and even with the intro, music cues up, and there's a player piano that has a reel that comes around, and it plays the music as it's supposed to be played. And a player piano has a piece of paper that folds into it, and as the paper comes around inside the piano, it plays the stuff. Okay.
Right.
So as a young teenage boy, I read Kirk Vonnegut's Player Piano, which totally ruined my life because it made me see behind the curtain of everything, and it just really disturbed me. This is that. This is basically, this is way in the future. You don't know it, but it's way in the future because the scene starts off with the Wild West, and it's people playing out these parts. And imagine the coolest video game you can imagine, but instead of playing a video game, you're actually in the environment. So you're interacting with avatars that look human but aren't human, and there's also humans there. And you can go on quests, you can go on side quests, you can interact with your environment, you can do anything you want. Imagine an open sandbox Rockstar edition of real life environment where you can shoot guns, you can rape and pillage, you can murder, you can do anything, and it's kind of a free-for-all. This is basically for the very elite to do this, but you don't know that. The way the show is done, it's done really well so that you're immersed in this environment and you're caring for these people that get slaughtered, and then all of a sudden they start over, and you're like, wait, what? I just saw this, and like it starts over again with like a reset of the game. So people come in on this train, they come off. There's a sequence of events that happens. You can join in these marauders to like rob people, or you can be the good guy and you can save the damsel in distress. You can fall in love with someone. There's all kind of things you can do in this environment. But here's the thing: is in order to create these characters, a lot had to go into it. So the entire time you're watching the first season, they keep showing you glimpses of this old man who's played by Ed Harris, very grizzled cowboy looking guy he's the bad guy. He's wearing a dark hat and dark suit, and he murders everybody and he rapes anybody he wants, and he cuts people's heads off and cuts their scalp off, and he's crazy. Okay. So the whole time you're watching this, they switch back to this, suddenly you're watching this young guy show up in town, and he's a nice guy, and he falls in love with this girl, and he's with his best friend who's kind of a jerk, and they're talking about, some kind of business, but he's like, oh, let's do this and let's do that. And his best friend is really bad. The timeline is broken. You don't realize it until the final episode that the things that they're showing you is not in sequence. So like a player piano, the thing folds back in on itself. The character is always resetting. You never know which scene you're watching. You never know if it's from 20 years down the road or 20 years in the past, or if it's present day. And so you're seeing some of the same characters more than once as younger and older. And the part that really gets you trippy is the main characters are the avatars in the game. There's a woman, her name is Dolores Abernathy. She's like a country girl, innocent, and she always has this line about, I never cease to see the beauty in the world or something like that. And she gets raped and killed and murdered and everything over and over and over again. And it's just, it's so head trippy. There's a few more avatars in the game that you don't realize are avatars. One guy's name is Bernard. It's played by Jeffrey Wright. Really classically trained, intelligent black dude. You've seen him in everything. As soon as you see him, you're like, oh, that guy. Who's the other guy? Played Hannibal. Anthony Hopkins.
Oh, okay.
So Anthony Hopkins as an old man, you think he's in charge, and you're never really sure who's an android and who's not. And all of a sudden, one of the people within the park, this really good looking black lady, she's a character in the show that dies a lot. She's supposed to be part of some storyline of Marauders. She suddenly becomes self-aware and wakes up like on the room where they're fixing her inside of the future science world. These guys are like taking the bullets out and hosing her down and getting her dressed up again. And she wakes up and she's like, what's going on? And she has conversations with the people who are working on her, and she's self-aware. And when she starts over again, she's like, how am I here? I was just in this thing. And then this happens, and then it happens, and then this happens, and it happens. And it's like, it's just this crazy, crazy show. Even me telling you this right now, if you were to watch it, you'd be like, hold on, what the hell? I mean, there's a lot of that. There's the whole season is full of that. Okay.
Wow.
The first season is enough for you to want to watch it more than once because it's so head trippy. Season 2 is even more of a backflip because it's about the corporate takeover of the game. Basically, the characters in the game want out. Some of them are unaware of what's going on, but some of them are self-aware. This Dolores Abernathy suddenly has the ability to tell other avatars what to do, and then suddenly the young black girl Maeve, she suddenly can tell everybody what to do. Like she commands them, drop your guns, and they drop their guns. And she's like, you're gonna all fall dead now, and they all fall dead. She's like, it's like God mode in a video game, and it's like, oh no, she's got admin status. Like all of a sudden she can wake up inside of the real world and she can change her own stats of everything and tweak it. And you're like, wait, what's going on? And then suddenly she has powers outside the world. It's sort of like Neo becoming self-aware in the real world and realizing he has powers in the real world.
Take a breath.
It is amazing. So season 3 came out, and I wasn't in the mood to watch season 3 when it came out because it's been out for over a year now. Aaron Paul is the new character that you meet in season 3, and he's basically ex-military, has a lot of foggy spots in his memory from being at war, and he's trying to make it in this new world. Meanwhile, Dolores Abernathy and Maeve have both escaped Westworld, and they've shut the whole thing down, and there's this corporate takeover thing going on with these other guys. And he is somehow in the middle of it. Like he becomes like an ally and an enemy sort of to both of them. And it's just, the writing is incredible. I mean, it's literally like, I can imagine months upon months of them debating and going, hey, what if we also do this, but this guy doesn't know about it? And whoa, what if we do a time sequence and you're thinking you're watching this line, but it's like 20 years before. And you're like, as a viewer, it's like, what the fuck?
Sounds like it would be draining, like mentally draining. Like
it is exhausting. It is awesome, but it's also exhausting to watch because the whole time, like Dolores will walk through once in a while and she's like, how's your show? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, what do you mean? Is it any good? I went, it's freaking me out. She's like, so it's hard to follow. It's even watching it the first time, I want to go back and watch all 3 of them again, all 3 seasons. It's so amazing, but I don't think it would matter to anybody that I'm geeking out about it unless somebody else watched it. So it is one of those things I realize is just, it's silly, but it wore me out so much. I was like, I want to watch something stupid now. So you'll enjoy this. There's a cartoon on Netflix called Disenchantment. It's made by Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons and Futurama. So in The Simpsons, it's basically like, they make fun of everything. It's like real life, but it's, basically sticks with the morals of there's dad and mom and the kids, and they all have their little quirks about them or whatever, but they're just basically trying to figure out their own life. And meanwhile, they go off on tangents. So you can tell that after, what's it been now, 30 years, 40 years of The Simpsons?
35, yeah.
They've exhausted almost everything they can do. So, they came out with Futurama so that they could talk about science fiction and have crazy adventures with science fiction characters, and also poke fun at science fiction ideas.
That show is so well written. There's so much intelligence on that show.
Disenchantment is similar, except for it's all of these, Game of Thrones and, all of these knights and the round table kind of shows. But basically poking fun at all of it. And it's written in layers that there's comedy coming at you so fast that you don't catch the jokes until you think about it later sometimes. And it's all making fun of itself. Like it's so well done, but it's so, you could also mindlessly just watch it and giggle along the way because it's like so stupid. But anyway, they got 3 seasons of that. I'd watched season 1, and the episodes are only like 15, 20 minutes long. So I burned through them within a day. I mean, it's really nothing to stress over, but it kind of let me just decompress for a minute. I was like, okay, now I'm not so much freaking out about Westworld. Because I mean, as much as the show Westworld was entertaining, it was also taxing to think about how it's a lot like Black Mirror. A lot of it is, geared towards our technology and how it affects us just around the corner. It's that what if we suddenly had contact lenses that you could remember everything? Or what if you had contact lenses that you could suddenly just look at things and know everything about them? You could listen to their conversations from across, 300 yards away if you just focused on them hard enough. Or what if you could replay the events of your day because you couldn't remember exactly the conversations you had, but you could play it back for people? You could literally just upload your memory into something and they could play back your memories and see if you're a terrorist or not. I mean, all this crazy, Black Mirror-y kind of stuff. There's all these type of things in it where just the video game aspect of it alone, I'm like, oh yeah, we're going to get to that eventually. I mean, it's going to be one of those things where people are bored with just a 2-dimensional or even a 3-dimensional environment. They're going to want to actually touch the thing that they're going to interact with. It's just around the corner. So,
yeah, I mean, the Oculus has already got, it started off just, little like Pong kind of thing, and you've seen where video games have gone now on the real world. And then now they've taken that 3D aspect and they've gone from the Pong to more of like an Atari style. So, I mean, it's exponentially going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all technology is built that way. And what's weird is, I've heard it said that once AI becomes autonomous, that technology is going to grow exponentially to the point that it can't even keep up with itself. Like literally the things they're going to start inventing, they're going to be obsolete by the time they're actually made, which could already be happening.
Yeah. I mean, basically they have, phones are basically that. I mean, by the time you buy the phone, it's already a generation behind. Even if you buy the newest one, they've already got the next one coming.
Yeah. I mean, what was it? One of the top guys at Google was on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago. And he said, basically all the technology that's out right now, as cool as that is, that's 10 years old. Joe was like, what? He goes, eventually it's going to get bigger and bigger, and then it's going to get smaller and smaller. And then at a certain point, it's going to be like a blood vessel in your inside of you, and you're just going to think what you want, and it's going to happen. And it's like, what? He goes, oh, no, it's going to have its benefits. We're going to be able to like let you know if you have like, lung cancer coming early, and we can detect it. And not only that, we can also cure it before you even know you have it. He's like, how's that going to happen? He's like, nanobites. You're going to have nanobites in your system that are going to be antibodies that they work, to kind of repair things. So if you're a smoker and you have lung cancer, this thing's basically going to repair what's in your lungs as you're smoking. So you're never going to get lung cancer. He said, and aging. We're going to fight aging as an illness. And you're not going to age like you used to. You're not going to physically show signs of aging. All your cellular repair is going to happen. And Joe's like, yeah, but what about the big brother issues of them being able to just turn you off? And he goes, you're going to want it. It's like, wait, what? So anyway, I have gotten to watch a lot of TV this past week, a lot because it's been so brutally cold and wet outside. It's been one of those weeks where it's like, why go outside? This is just awful outside. But also some easy shows to watch. There's a new one on Netflix called Lupin, Lupin, about a gentleman thief. It's really well done. It's a British show or French. I guess French show because there's subtitles in some parts where they have like the words written in French. But unlike other Netflix shows that are done in a different language, this one, they actually use enough actors that look like the characters on the screen that you're not freaking out because it's not 4 people doing every voice. So this one's good. This one's this guy who's basically this badass thief, and he can sort of navigate himself into any situation and out of any situation. And it's sort of like if Ocean's 11 was just one guy and he just decided to have his own adventure each episode. So crazy adventures of things that he does. You're never really sure who he is at times or who's on his side, who's not on his side, but it's a very interesting story. I think they're going to do more with it. It's definitely worth watching. It was fun to watch. I think the episodes are only like 30 minutes long too. So, and then I watched Bridgerton with my wife because
everyone's talking about that. I don't even have any idea what it is.
So watching it, it looks like nobility. I think they said they're in the early 1800s, nobility in Wales, England area. It's all about their life and who they're supposed to marry and their name and what it means. And, you know, if this person marries this person or if this person slights that person, what it does to their opportunity to marry for a better life and that kind of crap. And I'm watching it, and it's, first of all, it's got a lot of pretty people in it. So you're like, oh, they're at least nice to look at. There's a young black guy in it that is rumored to be a favorite to play 007 whenever they revamp who's going to play 007. I don't know the guy's name. He's a real sharp looking fella, but
is it Idris?
No.
Okay.
Hang on. Cast of Bridgerton. See, Siri's not as smart. Siri didn't come up with anything. She's like, Bridges of Madison County? No. Let's look at Google. Cast of Bridgerton. Okay, Renee Jean Page. He looks sharp. He's a sharp looking guy.
Okay.
I don't know if the camera can focus on it because I got it on auto.
It's a little unfocused, but I see the face.
He's tall. He's young. I looked it up. He's like 31, but he's of age and physical ability and whatnot. And he looks very dapper in a lot of these scenes because he has to dress up real sharp, and he is sharp. He's like one of the main characters of the show. And, you know, watching it, I heard, we looked it up, or Dolores was Googling away at who's who. And she's like, oh, he's favored now because of this show and because of the popularity of this show to possibly play 007. I was like, cool. That'd be a neat twist. So watching the show, we get a few episodes into it, and I look over at my wife, who has a similar past of being extremely poor. And I told her, I said, you know, it just dawned on me that I don't think either one of us have had any lineage that has anything to do with nobility like this. And she was like, oh, no. I was like, if anything, you were probably serving the lady in the house, one of your people, or in the fields, you know, trying to bring in the crops or something like that. I said, I was probably one of the indentured servitudes that's in the backside, you know, trying to put the shoes on the horse or something and getting kicked all the while. But I was like, I know that this is some people's lives, and it is interesting. And I asked her, I said, why is it that we're so fascinated with this kind of stuff? And she's like, I don't know. And I was like, is it because it's so lavish and so different than what we grew up with? Or is it, I mean, they always show like a young girl who's just naive and, oh my God, and the guy's supposedly worldly. And I'm like, is this the fantasy? And she didn't really answer, but I kind of feel like it is. I kind of feel like that's kind of what's expected in a way of young men. And I know growing up, that was kind of expected. Like it was, even though you were a young guy, you're expected to kind of learn stuff quickly. So sometimes me personally, I was eager to jump into some crazy scenario to go, well, this is where experience comes from. Let's get in the middle of the fight. It's going to happen. So Hey, who wants to go around the world? Okay. So I don't know. It was interesting to watch. The story is actually a good story. Once you get past all of the stupid nonsense of what they felt they had to do, or things they couldn't say, or felt like they couldn't say.
The bloodline stuff.
Yeah, the bloodline stuff is so stupid, but I get it. Whatever. It's a part of history, so okay, cool. But moving forward, like, I don't know what they're going to write next, because they kind of wrapped up everything as though this could exist as one season, even though it was like one of their more popular shows of the Christmas season for Netflix. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do a season 2 or not. I looked it up on the internet, and they said they didn't have any commitments to doing a season 2 yet. So there's no telling. That may be one and done, but it was interesting to watch. It sort of raised more questions than answers, if anything. I watched it and I went, wow, who's got all this crap for people just to make movies at? I mean, is there just castles sitting around or palaces sitting around that are like, I don't know, we're trying to pay the bills, and Netflix says they want to rent the place out for the next month. Come on in, guys. This will help pay for the taxes. I mean,
yeah, they're not getting any tourist people in, so they got to,
I guess. I mean, but the costume department is crazy involved. I mean, I can only imagine that with the popularity of shows like Game of Thrones and all that other kind of stuff, that there's a lot of these costumes basically just laying around because they had to make so many for extras. They were probably like, we can reuse some of this stuff. And
you also had Downton Abbey. I mean,
Downton Abbey, yeah.
It had a following for a while.
Yeah. Of course, that was PBS, so it's not a lot of money involved in PBS.
Yeah, I think they made a lot of money off of it, though. I mean, it got pretty popular.
Yeah. My wife said that she goes, this show is nothing like Downton Abbey. And I was like, okay. Like I never asked the question, but she's like, this is nothing like Downton Abbey. I was like, okay. She's like, they showed you more of the stuff behind the scenes. And I was like we would be in behind the scenes. And she was like, yeah, kind of.
So. Well, yeah, Netflix is going to show you a little bit more darker, dirtier kind of stuff versus PBS.
Yeah. So it was rated R because there are some sex scenes in the show. So there is that. So if you have small children, maybe not cuddle up on the couch and be like, honey, let's watch these young princes and princesses. You're in for a shock value. So there's that.
So my question is, did you watch WandaVision?
Not yet. Have you?
I have.
The whole thing?
Well, it's only the first two episodes.
Okay.
Only thing that's been released so far.
I need to. I'm going to. I just haven't yet.
You're smart enough to know that there's much more coming.
Yeah.
But a lot of backlash on that show right now because of the way they wrote the first two episodes.
Okay.
But you'll grasp it really quickly. Like something else is going on behind the scenes.
Well, I've watched some YouTube stuff about it, because it was coming and they kind of wanted to have like a spin on it and say, hey, be sure to watch this show. So I know that it's supposed to be basically in her imagination, because this is after Vision is dead. And this is her sort of wanting to manipulate her own environment so that she can share this time with him, even though it's not real. There was a lot of discussion about that on YouTube, about we haven't seen her use her full powers yet, and we get small glimpses of it, and they showed like scenes of her fighting Thanos and also holding a crowd at the same time, in both directions. And Thanos was a power all on his own, but when she shows up and he's like, I don't even know who you are, she goes, you will. I was like, oh no. But people who were into the comics are like, oh, this chick, like when she showed up on the scene, I know people who are into her were telling me like, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. And I was like, I don't know who she is. Like, I'm like Thanos. I'm like, what's going to happen? So I was really surprised, and I am going to watch it. So maybe I'll catch up. And then when we do this next time, we'll talk about WandaVision.
And it may be that it's going to be like every Friday, kind of like The Mandalorian was.
Maybe. Is that when it came out? Was Friday?
It came out on the first. No. When was it? This past Friday. Yeah, it was this past Friday. I'm sorry. Yeah, it was this past Friday it came out.
Okay.
So it may be, and it, like I said, it's just the first two episodes. So they did both episodes, and then I'm thinking maybe this Friday will be the third episode.
Okay.
But
Yeah, because I think they did that with was it The Right Stuff that I was watching, where they had 2 episodes and then it was one and one and one, but the 2 was to kind of get you hooked.
right.
And I think they did that. Yeah, they did that with Mandalorian in the beginning, didn't they? With the first season.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so as well with the first season. I think they released the first 2, and then it was one episode after episode after. Well,
Yeah.
this one you'll need the second episode
Okay.
for you to really get attached to it and understand what's about to happen. I think you
Yeah.
need the second episode. The first episode would be really just campy and kind of kooky if it didn't have the second episode to go with it right behind it.
Okay.
Like if you watch the first episode, you wouldn't know if you want to watch the second one or not.
I know they've shown scenes of the imagery, and it said that they were paying tribute to a lot of sitcom shows like Leave It to Beaver and Family Ties and stuff like that. And I Dream of Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie and Dick Van Dyke Show were the 2 that popped
Dick
in
Van
my
Dyke
head.
Show. Apparently, he was a what do they call it? One of the people who recommend stuff, a consult. He was a consult on the show. They reached out to him and was like, "Would you, can you help us out with this?" And he said, "I'll tell you the main thing I learned was if it can happen in real life, it doesn't belong on the show."
Okay.
He's like the point of our show was to look like real life, but have things that would never happen in real life happen. So they showed like images of the Dick Van Dyke Show in like one scene where his wife opens up a closet and 10,000 potatoes come rolling out of it and them falling all over the ground, and it's like just the most insane scenarios. And he's like, that was kind of the theme of our show. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. We had a couple of birthdays that came through recently. James Earl Jones turned 90.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, I don't know that Star Wars would be as big as it is now had it not been for his voice.
Oh, that iconic Darth Vader voice.
I mean, it is its own character. If you go back and watch that first movie without that voice, that's not a good movie. I mean, it's interesting, but if you don't have that thunderous,
his fan base would have been a lot smaller. You're right. It definitely helped increase the fan base for Vader with that iconic, just deep, powerful voice.
Yeah. Well, and there's been discussions of the fact that, he is 90 and they're trying to record as much of his audio as they can so they can make future stuff. But Hayden Christensen's supposed to be playing a young Vader, and there was a lot of talk about the fact that he's not going to be seen at all, even though he's playing the part, and you couldn't see anybody else playing the part because of his physical nature and his mannerisms and stuff like that, and the way he wields this lightsaber that we were so used to seeing. It wouldn't do it any justice to have anybody else play the part, even though you're going to hear James Earl Jones's voice and not his. And they were saying that the only way you're going to really see him is in flashbacks, and they're going to have to do a lot of flashbacks in order for you to see that. But for a large part, he's going to play that character much like the original guy in the movies that I don't even know his name. That's how
I was just
unimpressive it was.
I was literally just thinking the same thing.
I can't think of his name, but you say, who's Darth Vader? James Earl Jones. I mean, he wasn't James Earl Jones, but you get what I'm saying?
That also reminds me of the Chase and Amy scene when they're talking about Vader and how it was a racist because everybody wants to be a white guy.
They got terrible name.
remember when Hooper was on stage talking about his comic and Banky asked him about Star Wars and Lando Calrissian, and he said, that Uncle Tom mother. So your mom can listen. I didn't say the words.
Right. Yeah. All I can remember of Chasing Amy is Chinese finger cuffs. Some are really uncomfortable, like the back of a Volkswagen.
That's actually Mallrats.
That's Mallrats. Okay.
That's Mallrats.
Oh yeah, I'm blending the two.
Hey, you can blend them all. They're all Kevin Smith. They're View Askew world.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it really got me thinking about the fact that without him, Star Wars is not Star Wars. It doesn't have any of the fandom or the following or the movies or anything. The franchise is just not the franchise without that voice. And I don't know whose call it was to make that happen, but that was really impressive to do that. I also read, because I got to reading on the fact that his voice is going to be used for Hayden Christensen, is that between the movies of second and third one, that Lucas pulled Hayden Christensen aside and said, listen, you're going to need to become a man between this season and this episode and the next episode. He's like, right now you're a boy, but to be Darth Vader, to be the guy who turns, I need you to put on some mass. So apparently he worked out like a freak and put on like 25 pounds of muscle, which is hard to do. But I mean, he did it for the role and it looks the part. I mean, when you go back and watch it again, you're like, okay, I could definitely see the transition. You definitely did your work. Yes, that's really good. So I don't know.
Well, his acting also. I mean, he went from, kind of a immature actor to a more seasoned actor.
Yeah. Well, and you have to. I mean,
for the character, you had to. I mean, that was necessary for that character's growth, because he had to have that character arc of where he was going from a naive little boy to being the Padawan to being the freaking guy who can destroy everything.
Yeah. Well, he's got that moment where he's with Anakin in the elevator, and he's like, "Did you see that? She hardly even looked at me." And I was like, "Oh wow, you're such a little kid here." It's like, oh geez, this goes really bad, really fast. Makes you want to, I don't know, kill younglings at some point. Too soon? Sorry, too soon.
Too soon for that one.
So anyway, I did watch one other movie. I know this seems crazy, but I watched a lot of TV. I watched this movie called Beyond the Wire with Anthony Mackie. Anthony Mackie, I don't know if you remember, he's done a lot of movies. He was Falcon on the Avengers. He's been in a ton of stuff. He was in Altered Carbon when they redid the last season.
I was supposed to watch that. I never got to watch that one.
He's really impressive, and there is that discussion of him not being Falcon in the future, but taking up the mantle and becoming Captain America. Because in the comic books, he becomes Captain America at some point, and then at some point, Bucky becomes Captain America. Like all three of them at some point or another are Captain America.
I just read that he's coming back as Captain America.
Yeah, so they're gonna do, with this time shift thing, there is the ability for him to come back at times, and it's been rumored that Robert Downey Jr. has said that he would reprise the role as Iron Man if the right story came along. It's sort of like hey, let's take a break. Like, I don't want to do this no more. And then after you make Dr. Doolittle, everybody's like, okay, maybe go back to playing Iron Man, dude. We get it. You want to talk to the animals? Go back and play Iron Man. But no, I mean, again, if the right story comes along, why wouldn't anybody want to play these roles? Because they're so much fun to play.
Yeah, he didn't want to get pigeonholed into that Iron Man kind of character. Like in some places you look at someone, they couldn't play anything else. I mean,
and the best part about him playing that role is for a lot of it, he don't have to be there, because all you see is the face and the mask and him talking.
Right.
He's not actually there. It's all CGI. So, I mean, it's sort of like, being Mando. I mean, he doesn't even have to be the guy in the suit for a lot of it. They have like 3 or 4 other guys that play him in the show. It's his voice though. I mean, he's reading lines with his glasses on and his little booth, and I hear that you're going, you know what I'm saying? So it's the Darth Vader thing all over again. He gets to play it without actually physically getting hurt.
Yet again, we go back to the Darth Vader thing. It changed everything.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sorry, I sidetracked here. Beyond the Wire. It's a movie that came out on Netflix. It's wartime. It follows Anthony Mackie and this other character who's like a drone pilot guy. He's in Nevada, and he chooses to make something happen that costs a lot of collateral damage. And because of it, he almost gets court-martialed, but he gets sent to the front lines instead. They're like, you need to see what you affected. So they basically send him over there. When he gets there, he has to report, and Anthony Mackie's his superior. So he comes in front of him, and they're talking, and he's like, we're going to go on a humanitarian aid relief. We're going to take these vaccines across the behind the wires, the title of the thing. He's like, it's not on the books, but if we deliver this medicine, we're going to get some intel. It's going to help us take down this other guy who's trying to get these codes for nuclear weapons, because the last thing we need is this guy getting a hold of them. So there's a moment where they're like, yeah, but aren't we going with any backup? And Mackey's like changing his shirt or something. He takes his shirt off and he's like, we're not going to need backup. I'm all the backup we need or whatever. And he's like cyborg. Like, you see his neck and his head and everything else you can see through his body with like mechanical stuff. And there's like an exoskeleton, and it's like, holy crap. And he's like, I'm 4th generation, top secret. And he's like, how old are you? And he's like, 5. So he's like, but I have an AI that's sentient, and he's telling them this is the next evolution of war. And they have these kind of like infantry robot things that they call Gumps, which I think is hilarious that they call it Gump, like Forrest Gump. No, man, that line, and these machines, I just spit on the microphone. but these big mechanical looking things are like, bulletproof, and they're shooting at other Gumps from the Russians. And it's this interesting storyline about collateral damage, basically. But also the fair warning of, if you create an AI, it's going to eventually think, okay, how do I stop this conflict? Because it's not going to stop until we stop. So he turns on America, basically. And this guy has to figure out how to stop it. But at the same part of it, you kind of hear the discussion of it, and you're like, yeah, okay, so in a way, America needs this war to continue in order to even exist with what it's doing. And it sort of goes back to something that I've been saying for a long time, is that, we are a people of war. We've always been at war, whether we want to say it or not. Since the first man picked up a piece of meat and somebody else wanted it, or a female and somebody else wanted it, we've been at conflict. It's all about resources and power and everything else. And even though people don't want to admit it, some of our best technology comes out of the lives that are lost, whether it's medical advancement or whether it's technology, because you can't seem to talk to people on one side of a mountain or another in Afghanistan. You flood the money to people who can create you what you need. And now we all have supercomputers that are on our phones and on our watches, soon to be in our glasses. I mean, this sort of takes 2 steps down the line and turns around and looks back at us right now and says, this is what's coming if we're not ready. So the story is weak. The technology's cool looking. It's worth a watch, though. I mean, it's not a great movie. The acting in it is not great. Anthony Mackie's great in it. And this kid, wherever this kid is that plays this drone pilot, he ends up being a pretty good actor in this. But I don't know how Netflix afforded to make this. Like, I don't know how they afforded to make it. I really don't. It's a lot of CGI. And people must be just cranking out this kind of technology to make it look like it does. Because CGI wise, it looks beautiful. There's a lot of scenes in this where you're like, God, how did they pull that off? Or my brain is thinking, how did they pull that off? Because I have that weird, how did they make it mentality. Of course, I can take myself out of any show just for a minute going, how did they shoot that shot? Wait. What happened here? Let's pause it.
Well, we discussed that before on a different podcast that you're
yeah.
You saw things in shows that I didn't, because you look at them at a different angle because of the way you think.
Well, and I think that other people do too, but maybe from different ways. Like, some people are more analytical about the dialogue that's written. Like, if you're a writer, you may look at the dialogue that's written and how they springboard one idea into another, and you may look at it that way. Some people are more about the aesthetics of it, or, how did they get the costuming to look like this? How much money did they sink into this or that? And I don't know. My brain, I guess, because I've been doing this crap, my brain is in, how did they get that angle? Is it shot and then cut away? Is it CGI here? Is it, I don't know. I think if I had a new life to start over right now, I would go into more production type stuff and learn how to do that kind of stuff. It's a little weird to say that at 40, almost 7 years old, but yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. By the way, I'm using the good camera. Does this look better?
Yeah, it does. I can actually see a lot. It is a lot crisper.
Okay. I realize even looking at I got the screen elevated here, but even looking at the screen, I can see I still got the dead eye look in that one eye.
How's it coming along?
No change.
No change.
No. I'm still doing drops twice a day. I go back on the 21st to the retina doctor, which is the back of the eye. He's the one that did that second surgery. They're probably going to release me because there's nothing much to do with the back of the eye. Everything now has to deal with the front. I go to the cornea specialist, which is the front of the eye doctor, Dr. Cross in Columbia, the week after the 27th, which I think is Wednesday. And in my last appointment, he mentioned what I heard him say was they're going to take the stitches out on that day. Now there's like 3 millimeters worth of stitches on the cornea where the baling wire poked into it. So he starts describing how this is going to go. He's like, I'll just basically take a needle and it's got a serrated side on one side. And I was like, whoa, time out. I was like, when does my stunt double sit here and I get to watch it happen? Because this sounds really cool to watch someone else have it done. I mean, don't get me wrong. Even watching it, I'm going to be like, oh. I said, but you're going to do that to me? I was like, am I going to be awake? Because I don't want to be awake. I don't want to. I was like, please tell me you're not going to be like, just look that way and hold still.
Yeah, you lost me with needle in the eye. I just. Yeah.
I was like, can we at least knock me out or something? I mean, just for a minute. I mean, I don't need nothing major, but I don't know. It's terrifying to think about, even though I know that it's routine. I know that people get it done all the time. He even made a comment. He's like, when people have LASIK, we have a thing where that we take out, 12 to 14 stitches at a time, and it's no big deal. And I was like, for you, which I'm glad that you're capable of that. That's way more reassuring. Yeah, that's way more reassuring than you going, I don't know, we'll figure it out when we're in there. I mean, how bad could it hurt? Stuff like that.
Let's learn together.
Yeah, this will be a learning. I'll hold your hand. You'll hold my hand. Wait, I need my hand. Okay. So maybe not hold my hand, but yeah. So once the stitches come out, he said something about he needs it to heal a little bit longer after that before they put a lens in. Okay. And when he described that, what my brain heard was contact lens. What my wife heard was they're going to put a lens in your eye. And I was like, okay, what you said does make sense. I was like, otherwise, why would he say, and then we could put a contact lens on later? And she was like, yeah, they're going to put a lens in your eye. And I was like, oh, that would be great. Because I don't want to have to every day go, okay, here we go. My mom has contact lenses. I've seen her have to fight with those in the past. And it always wigs me out when anything gets near my eye or anybody's eye, like even in a movie. I mean, Star Wars, again, takes you right back. The little probes coming at Princess Leia's eyeball. And I never watched that scene for like 10 years. Every time it would come near, I'd go, and I'd always look away. It wasn't until I had the VHS tape and I watched it like 20 times in a row one day. Don't judge me. That it was on, and I was like, oh, they don't actually show it. Okay. But I guess that was the beginning of me freaking out about things going in people's eyes, because that was the first time my little, monkey brain was like, wait, things can go in your eye? Yeah. So, and then there's also the one with Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back where he's frozen in carbonite. But beforehand, they have that big giant plate full of needles that comes at him, and he screams as they go, bang! And he's like, ah! You're like, no. Yeah. I didn't see that scene either for a long time. It took a long time to watch. Which is weird, right? Yeah. I mean, sort of an irrational fear for a child. As an adult.
I'm sure there was some context to it. I mean, I'm sure at some point in your life you probably blocked something out of your mental knowledge that something happened to you as a kid with an eye thing or something.
No, I don't think so.
See, I have problem with like water, like open water. I don't even like watching movies with open water. Like people like the movie Open Water. I never watched it. I don't like the idea of not being able to see land. And it's all based on a childhood fear of almost drowning.
Okay. That's fair. My wife has an irrational fear of balloons.
Okay.
I just picture like, she's got brothers and sisters, and I'm sure aunts and uncles that probably at one time chased her around the house with balloons and popping them around her and freaked her out. But she has this irrational fear of balloons. Anytime she sees them, she's like, "Oh, well, how about that?" Which is weird because she also likes fireworks, which is way louder and unpredictable as well.
But they're unpredictable. But a boom's coming. Like
right.
someone's not gonna. Like, and I'm sure if someone lit a firecracker and threw it by her foot as a kid, she probably wouldn't like fireworks.
I don't think that bothers her near as much.
Maybe it was Stephen King's
Maybe she watched that and it really left an impression on her.
I have a friend who has a really irrational fear of clowns, and it's based on watching it.
I have an irrational fear of people who look like my ex-wife.
That's not an irrational. That's a very rational fear.
Okay, that was learned behavior. My bad.
Wow, that one came out of left field.
Sorry.
No, it's a good one.
Still true. So yeah. How about that football, huh? Pretty good football.
Look, I know everyone says he's the GOAT, but until he actually wins the title, I'm still saying Montana's the GOAT.
They played twice this season and the Saints beat them both times. And I was telling everybody I really thought the Saints were just going to win again, especially with this being Breeze's last hurrah. I was like, they're going to win. It doesn't matter. But also, like, every other game happened the way I predicted it would go. I mean, I didn't think that Green Bay was going to have a problem. They didn't. I thought that the Bills were going to win, even though I felt it was going to be close, and it was. What's the other game?
Kansas City and
Kansas City. I knew Kansas City would win, even though I wanted to root for Cleveland. I mean, Cleveland's kind of the feel good story that you want to hear. It's the team that used to be great. That for a long time was down on their luck. I mean, they went 0-16. And you watch Baker Mayfield play in college, and then when him getting picked up, it was like, oh, cool. Well, they're finally getting some pieces back into place. And then they got Nick Chubb and a lot of these, this up and coming coach. And it's like, oh, they're getting all the pieces together. And I mean, this was a great season for them. And I'm sad that it was over for them as quickly as it was, but I mean, they got pretty far into the playoffs here and deserved everything that they got. And I think they're going to be back. I mean, I really hope that they come back. Cause I was telling somebody the Browns, I think is secretly everybody's favorite team, even though they're not. Like if you're a Cowboys fan, I think you secretly root for the Browns to kind of make it. Kind of like that weird kid that lives across the street that just happens to show up with a football all the time. Hey guys, want to play football? You're like, all right, kid, come on, let's play. If he wins a game, you're like, all right, good for you, man. Good for you. Like, I kind of feel that way about the Browns. Like if the Browns actually beat the team, they'd be like, all right, you deserve one. I mean, when they played the Steelers have like 6 or 7 Super Bowls, and it's like, okay, you beat us. Good for you.
Well, I think that's kind of funny because I think the Steelers let them in the playoffs because they were playing them, and then when they got to the playoffs, they didn't realize what they led into the playoffs.
Well, and I also think they made a huge mistake sitting a lot of their starters.
Right.
By sitting their starters, you do lose something. You lose a bit of a timing issue, and that became a big issue right away in the first quarter against the Steelers.
Well, I also think there was a little bit more of a play to it that they basically knew the opponent. Like the Cleveland had to play to win that game. They had to win the game, so they were going to pull no stops. Well, basically, what that allowed Pittsburgh to do is sit their players. They already knew they were in the playoffs, and play an opponent where they knew exactly what was going to happen because they had to pull out everything to win.
Yep.
So they had basically it was like an extra film tape.
They got better coaching from it. It's like, okay, we've seen what didn't work. Let's do different.
Right. But then what happened is when they got to the playoffs, Cleveland changed their ways. And the coach, they were, and it's hard for me to say because Tomlin is fantastic. He was outcoached.
Yeah. And I don't like hearing people give him grief because I think he's an exceptional coach.
I think he's an exceptional coach.
There's a lot of people who are quick to judge coaches whenever they have a little bit of a losing streak. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the coach. Sometimes you just hit a stride as a team. It could be chemistry within the locker room. It could be something to do with your players. It could be something to do with one of your coaches. Yes, ultimately, everyone points fingers at the top and says, well, he's the guy in charge, so it must be his fault. And a lot of times they take blame for things that may not necessarily be theirs. But I think really they hit their stride early in the season. And as the season went on, they got overconfident. And I think that was what eventually let them lose. The Browns were just hitting their stride at the right time. Unfortunately, they faced off against a better team. That's just all it was. I think that moving forward, Kansas City is going to have their hands full with Buffalo, but I think that Kansas City is going to ink it out.
Well, that is all based on if Mahomes passes protocol.
Right.
I don't think Henne came in and did a great job to get him.
Henne did a great job, yeah, but I don't think Henne's got the experience necessary. And Buffalo right now is firing on every cylinder. I mean, they are on fire.
They are.
That being said, I still think it's all Green Bay's to lose. I think Green Bay showed how dominant they can be, and I think they're going to handle Tampa Bay exactly the same way.
I hope that's the case.
I think that it's interesting to see such young quarterbacks and guys at the ends of their careers meeting at this point in the game. I mean, you got some of the best quarterbacks being the youngest and the oldest. And not only that, but coaching wise, I mean, you got some guys that have coached for a long time and some guys that are just new at it and they're still making it happen. But it's a very fun thing to watch right now, even with like limited fans in the crowd, which I'm glad the NFL finally allowed some fans in the crowd. I mean, I would hope that college football showed that you can do that effectively. But I really think it's Green Bay's to lose. I think that a lot of people are going to overlook Green Bay, which is just enough fuel to the fire to get them where they want to be mentally. You figure they're going to play against Tom Brady, so everybody's going to be talking about Tom Brady's the greatest, blah 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 blah. Yeah, Green Bay's done it before, but I don't know if they got what it takes to beat Tom Brady. And all this Tom Brady crap's just going to fuel his fire. And I mean, if I had money in the game and I was going to put money on any quarterback, I'm putting it on Aaron Rodgers because he makes amazing thing happen with no time on the clock. You're like, oh, they only got 3 seconds. Buckle up.
He handles the mental part of the game so much better than any other quarterback I've ever seen. I mean, like,
yes,
he has more touchdowns on a dead play than anybody else I've ever seen anywhere. I mean,
I don't know what he says to his guys to motivate him for that last ditch effort, but he makes things happen when you're like, oh, we're down by 6 points and there's only 5 seconds left on the clock and we're on our own 20. It's like, okay, buckle up, this is gonna be fun. He's gonna get 2 plays out of it and it's gonna be a touchdown. He's exciting. I mean, I wonder of some of these quarterbacks that we consider gunslingers. Green Bay's really gotten spoiled from going from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers. What a tremendous handoff of Hall of Fame talent.
Well, that was like my Niners going from Joe Montana to Steve Young.
Exactly.
And we would have gone to Aaron Rodgers. If they had drafted properly instead of Alex Smith, they would have drafted Aaron Rodgers first, which they were supposed to out of Cal. We would have gone from Joe Montana to Young to Rodgers.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I hate it for Alex Smith. This season has been a great story of his comeback. And then to get injured. Did you see the trophy his wife made out of his cast for his leg? She took the cast that he had on his metal like brace, and she had someone forge it into a Lombardi trophy. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
I followed him in college when he was at Utah, and then when he got picked up by the 49ers, I was like, okay, this is going to be kind of cool. But like they went through like 3 coaches, and he never seemed to have a coach that would want him to play his style of football. And then they traded him away and, went on their merry way. Then he goes to KC. He turns out to be a great talent under Reed. And then he gets injured. And it's one of those career-ending type injuries. And he comes back. And you're like, okay, cool. Good story. Like, do it. Takes the doggone Redskins to the playoffs. And you're like, or they're not the Redskins, the Washington football team.
Will always be the Redskins to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So takes the Redskins to the playoffs and gets injured. And I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. The kid Heineke did a great job. Heineke. I mean, he played his heart out. I mean, he deserves the number 2.
Yes. Him playing quarterback was amazing. And I was happy to see like his defensive captain, when he scored that touchdown running on the sideline, his defensive captain ran across the field and grabbed the back of his jersey and was pointing at the camera. Remember his name. Like he was he wanted people to know, like, this kid's the real deal.
He earned a roster spot, if not with Redskins. He
With
earned
somebody.
He earned somebody because he played his heart out. I
Yeah.
mean, they almost beat Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
They technically, for all intents and purposes, they should have beat Tampa Bay the way they were playing.
Yeah.
They just didn't have enough time. Well,
and it does open up the door for the possibility of the future. Like you're talking about, if he doesn't play with them, he could play with somebody else. With this season coming to an end and next season coming, there's a lot of discussion about, the two top draft picks, the quarterback from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence, and the guy from Ohio State. What's his name?
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields. Yeah. Sorry. Brain fart.
Well,
so
I hope number one goes the way it's supposed to go, because it couldn't happen to a better guy. I hope Urban Meyer has to freaking coach that little girl.
So here's another possibility: is Deshaun Watson wants out of Houston. Like, he's not happy with the decision of who they picked for GM. He's made it publicly known that he wants out of there. They could do a trade. I mean, because every team out there is all about, how do I win now? Because if you win now, that means you have a future job doing something else down the road. Getting that title of saying Super Bowl winner gets you accolades down the road. So,
well, there's a lot of speculation going on right now that the team that should have drafted him in the first place is looking at possibly picking him up, the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. I saw a tweet that said that the Panthers were talking about trading Bridgewater and a bunch of draft picks, but apparently that wasn't accepted. Like, people turned it down already. So it would have been interesting for him to come back to the Carolina area. I'm
sure he would love it.
Yeah. I mean, he's turned into a great pro quarterback.
He is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, I do believe.
And in college, I did not think he was going to translate to pros that well, and he proved me wrong. I mean, I was pleasantly surprised.
He was a transcendent talent. I mean, I felt like he would actually do okay in the NFL. I didn't think he was going to be an elite, but he is. He is an elite quarterback.
Well, and also at the beginning of this season, they did a special on him where they showed like his off the field stuff where he.
Oh, he's an amazing guy too. I mean, he's a good human being.
He went on some kind of pilgrimage around the world and started like doing a lot of volunteer work. And I was like, wow, this is really impressive. Like, I had no idea this guy was that deep. But yeah, it was really impressive.
His mother works at a conference center. And when they had the big hurricane, he paid like 3 of the ladies that work in the stadium. He paid their salaries.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I mean, like he's a great humanitarian. He's a good human being. He just went to the wrong school, but that was because of our coach's fault. You know that story, right?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
For those who don't know, go ahead.
Basically, there was a high school gathering for coaches, and Deshaun Watson's mother was working the conference, and she spoke to, "You're about to lose your camera, looks like. Battery's about to die."
Uh-oh.
So real quickly, just finish it. So basically, she went up to Spurrier and said, "My son loves you and wants to play for you." And he's looked at her and basically said, "Yeah, everybody wants to play for me." And then she did the same thing to Dabo, and Dabo's like, "Really?" And he sat down and actually had a conversation with her. Yeah. And so that's why he chose that school over South Carolina, because he originally wanted to go to South Carolina.
Well, now that you can see my battery, I can see my battery. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for being part of this. We'll do it again.
You got it, brother. Next week we'll talk about WandaVision if you get a chance.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody who's listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, share with your friends. And as always, you want to do it?
Cue that cow.